You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode 62.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hello, world of people that listen to the Amplify the podcast. It is Thais Sky.
I'm Bree Seeley, and we want to just say welcome, amplifiers, to our little world, our little slice of the universe right here in our closets.
This is the final episode of season 2.
Yeah. Kind of crazy.
Gonna let that sink in for a minute. We have done 62 episodes, Bree Seeley.
In like under a year and a half. It's been like a year and 3 months, I think.
That is insane. It is insane. We've had so much fun with you all, and we couldn't think of a better guest to be wrapping up season 2 with. Seriously, this woman, Skyler, is incredible, and she is going to just shower you with inspiration. And so we wanted to start off the podcast and continue that inspiration, or preamble.
Prime you. We're going to prime you
with more inspiration.
With our inspiration before we get to that inspiration.
With playing big and going big and being real and being grounded and being all the things. And you can do it. And your potential's unlimited. And you've got this. So, Bree, why don't you start us off?
Oh, really? I'm supposed to follow that with some sort of insight? I can't just keep going?
Just put more cliche words together. I found that that's all that's required.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that Thais and I really like to talk about, if you've heard any of our other 61 episodes, which P.S. if you haven't, get yourself educated.
Plenty of time.
Yes. Get yourself educated and go download the other 61 episodes. Is this idea of not using motivational things as Band-Aids. And
I didn't realize that that's how you were going.
Really showing up for your dreams in a big, authentic, vulnerable way. I guess we're going to we were throwing around a few ideas before this, and I kind of just encompassed all of them into that statement, which is fun. So we'll talk about a few different things. So Thais, what does it look like for you to play big?
Oh my gosh. Playing big to me means having fun. That's it. Like having fun. And we talked about having fun in the episode before last, but to me, that's the most important thing. If I'm not having fun, something's off, because I'm a very playful person and I have a lot of energy and I have a lot of passion and I really love life and I love living life. And it's most of the time it's BTW. Because when I hate life, I really fucking hate life. But if I'm not doing it with a place of joy and fun and holy shit, I can't believe I get to do this, then I'm not doing it right in my perspective. So to me, playing big means getting uncomfortable, but having fun doing it and not taking myself so seriously and not taking the world so seriously because we're all going to die anyway. So what can we do to
much fun?
Have as much fun. But also pause, like we've got to be responsibly fun here, okay? Because people use this idea of I'm just gonna have fun to mean shirking off responsibility and denying what is real. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the more that you can actually accept what is here, accept who you are, accept your limitations, accept what is reality, and see it truly, you can really, really explode in your capacity to have fun because things aren't as serious when you can be with the seriousness of what is here.
Nice.
That's it. That's all I got. That's my mic drop moment. Playing big is so like the idea of it. Like, gosh, what does that even mean? Playing big? Like how?
It's so different for everyone. And I feel like in our culture, or at least in the entrepreneurial culture, playing big is so like, go full out, bet it all, put all your cards on the table,
Yeah.
mortgage your house and like take all the risks. And like, if you're not risking everything, you're not doing it right. And like, it's this whole
Yes.
idea of like
See,
playing
you
big.
can put inspirational messages together too. Look at
But
you.
I'm not saying these are like what I live by,
I
but
know, but I'm just saying, like, see, it's not that hard.
a lot of people think that playing big looks like Tony Robbins, and that's the only way to play big is if you're filling amphitheaters full of thousands and thousands of people, and that's just not the case, and
Yeah.
so Skyler will define for us what her definition of playing big is, but I think it's really important, like, what does big look like for each of us?
Mm-hmm.
How does playing big show up in your life? Because how it shows up in my life is different than how it shows up in Theis's life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. So, what does it look like for you to play big? Does it look like having, a bajillion Instagram followers and getting a ton of likes and, having this business where you're serving like at Tony Robbins level? Or is it that you're really deeply, purposefully, connecting with what is here? And that's playing big for you, showing up in every situation as the most you, the most fulfilled, the most expanded you that you can be in the world.
Did you just do that for me?
I think that's my definition of playing big.
Oh, okay. I thought
Why?
you were talking about that was my definition. I'm like, that was just so
Oh no.
epic. That was beautiful.
No,
No,
I think
I
that's
love
my
it.
definition is like, I'm possibly going to a networking event tonight. How can I be the best Brie that fucking shows up at this networking event tonight? How can I play big in that situation? How can I play big with being at home with the kiddies and writing all day today? It's doesn't always look like how our society or how our industries present it to us to look.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for me, I have to say I've put a lot of pressure in my past to be big. And I've had to do a lot of work around my fears of being normal and my fears of being mediocre. Because I have a lot of my drive and ambition comes from a deep fear of being a nobody. And that it's been like 6 years of really looking at my fear of being a nobody and what that looks like and how that's driving my business and how that's affecting how I show up. Because what happens when you're doing anything from, well, let's talk about this specifically because we're here. But for me, I found that if I'm operating from a place of needing something, some sort of external validation, like a lot of likes to, validate that I'm not normal, that I'm not mediocre, that I'm big or whatever, it doesn't matter what accolades I get. It doesn't matter what awards I get. It doesn't matter, who fucking retweets me. It doesn't matter. It's not actually going to sink in because it's coming from a wounded place. So the more that I've really, really been able to untangle the fear and like, what is here and get deeper at the issue, I found that my drive has slowed down and I'm no longer terrified at the idea of being normal and really, really loving my mediocre life and really, really loving that I could die a nobody and being okay with that. And it's amazing at how, as that has happened, my level of impact has increased more so than I've ever thought was possible. But I actually really don't. I can't. I'm not. I can't say I've relinquished my ego. Of course, I care, but it it's starting to no longer really be the point of the thing that I'm doing. And that's been really great. That's been really healing for me. That's been a really big deal. I still have a little bit more work to go, but that's been feeling really, really good. So being big could mean being mediocre. And isn't that so okay? Like not everybody needs to be at the front lines. Like we need all of humanity. We need everybody. We need, if we're talking about like activism and we're talking about like, what is going on in our country and our president, like yes, we need the people who are like picketing and we need the people who's like putting their lives on the we also need the doctors and the people who are taking care of the people that are getting hurt. We also need the lawyers, like people who are behind the scenes who are putting their intellectual knowledge of law. We need all people. And so
and really it's more even at a local governmental level that like your impact is actually bigger and can be felt
yes,
more
so
than if you
local
were.
officials are important. Showing up for local meet, like all of it's important. All of it has a place. And so being really present when you're hiking with the trees and your dog, that's really important work. It's all good. We need it all. We need the mediocre. We need the quote unquote greatness. We need it all. We need it all. So let's stop with the judgment of what big looks like, because there's no such thing. It's all subjective, and really focus on just really tapping into and accessing our love and our happiness and our solidarity and our reverence and our expansion.
One other thing I've been writing about a lot lately too is that if your vision is being driven by this place of shoulds, or by this place of, well, other people are, or by this place of, well, society expects me to, or any of those things, like if your vision is being driven by something that isn't real and isn't your truth, then I believe it's more likely to fail.
Yeah.
And so really tapping down into, like, why is it that I want this? And being guided, like having your playing big, being guided by your soul, being guided by something that's more than just you, more than just the Kardashians and the people that we're all trying to keep up with, and the thises and the that's, and the, well, so-and-so has a kid by 45 or 35, so I have to have a kid by 35, and so-and-so got married by the age of 21, so I have to get married by 21, and my parents are expecting grandchildren, and this and that and all these other things. And so really digging deep and asking yourself, like, why is it that I want this version of playing big? What is it about this version of playing big that's really important to me? And be guided by that. Don't be guided by the, the shiny object syndrome of you're playing big. Neither Thais nor I are looking to be Tony Robbins, and, our impact is going to be felt just as much in a different way. And so, like I said earlier, define it for yourself, figure out what it means for you, and let that be enough, because it is way, way, way more than enough.
All right. So let's wrap this up, because we have an exceptionally long interview with Skyler. She was fabulous. And she just went.
So many truths.
Like
She just
rumbled, and it was epic. So we want to give her all of the space for her to share all of her brilliance. So we're going to wrap up our portion early.
And quickly say thank you to all of you that have joined us for 2 seasons of this. Speaking of playing big, this podcast has been playing bigger than either of us thought when we launched it. And so we couldn't be here today without each of you. And thank you.
We're so grateful. We're so grateful. We've had a blast, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. And keep in touch with us. We love to hear more about what's been going on in your world. I mean, you can find Bree by searching Bree Seeley,
and you can find
Bree
Thais
without an E, not like the cheese,
by searching Thais Sky. Yeah, we're that Google thing that I always talk about. It fucking works, Thais.
I know, it's amazing.
You Google things, it knows everything.
So if you Google my name, guess what? I come up like number one.
Me too.
Yeah, we're like the only ones of us in the world.
I know.
It's
so
amazing.
Cool.
It really is
brilliant. Or Google's just really smart and it only just shows us.
I mean, I've talked to Google. I've made sure. All right.
All right, amplifiers, we are back with a great guest.
Oh, yes, she is.
Yes, she is.
I don't even have to do my thing. I think Skyler got it. I think she's got it.
So, weren't you having a conversation like that, Thais, where someone was saying something that was like, what was the thing that you were talking about with Kim last night? Where you'd point to something and be like,
yes.
And you'd be like, yes, it is.
Yes. So we had a dinner party last night, and one of our brilliant guests, her name is Kim, she asks everything in a way that you can't say it's not. So she'll be like, she's beautiful, isn't she? I'm like, you can't then be like, no, she's not. And so she'll be like, it's the best thing.
I love it because she voluntells you. She you get voluntold. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're like, yeah.
So I decided that I'm going to be adopting this style of speaking more often. So I'm amazing, aren't I? See? And then you have to say, yes, you are.
I believe that's also in the same methodology of Maxine Waters reclaiming my time. So,
yes. Incredible video, like the most incredible moment in women's history of all times.
Wait.
Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm reclaiming my time. I have to introduce Skyler before we get into all this stuff, you guys.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Because, Thais, ladies, we have an amazing guest on the podcast today, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Let me tell you all about her. So, Skyler McCurine is redefining the look of leadership as a personal stylist, public speaker, Wonder Woman through her business, Le Red Balloon. Driven by the lackluster stereotypical portrayal of women in the media and the devastating landscape of leadership, male, pale, stale leadership, she leads workshops for teenage
Oh my
girls.
God, I can't. Oh.
She leads workshops for teenage girls and professional women around leadership, parity, self-acceptance, personal branding, and of course, style. Skyler's passion for fostering leadership, audacity, and courage in young women led her to an invitation to TEDx, San Diego Business Journal Emerging Generation Award, and her recent invitation to attend the Forbes Under 30 Summit as Swiss luxury watch brand Baume Mercier's guest of distinction. She was a finalist for the 2016 Forbes 30 Under 30 list in the social entrepreneurship category. She is a native San Diegan and received her bachelor's in communication studies from Loyola Marymount University and her master's in organizational management from Ashford University. Her fervent belief in inclusion, red balloons, and champagne are her personal North Stars.
I felt like when you were reading that, I was like a boxer in the corner, like jumping up and down, like ready, like getting ready to go in the ring. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We love that you're here, and we have a very important question for you.
Yes.
Ask me.
What does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
So juicy. First of all, I made that sound and my neighbor's dog started barking. I got so excited by that shriek. That's so amazing. I have to ask myself first, I have to really spend time with the word amplify. Amplifying is about extending, it's about broadening, it's about expansion. There's nothing small about it. There's nothing compact or tight or contorted about it. When something is amplified, it just, I just think of even like the image of like a phonograph, even like comes from this small place and then it shoots out, it bursts out, breaking forth and going even wider than that space originally intended for it to. So when I think about amplify, an amplified life means when you don't play small with yourself. And it's not about numbers. It's not about how big something is. It's about how big that thing was for you to overcome, what you really needed to sit with in order to play big, in order to really encourage yourself to show up so that you can free yourself from that tightness and that fear to do something that's bigger, something that you thought you could not do. So living an amplified life to me is like figuring out and deciding what your truth is, spending time with unwinding yourself and taking and cutting those things that we've bound ourselves with that have kept us small. Things like the truths that we learned that weren't true, like I'm not enough, or I'm broken, or it's my fault. Those things that have kept us small, we start unchaining and untethering ourselves from those things. And then, we find the light of who we are, and as best we can, we tell that truth. And then we cast that out, and then other people receive an invitation to do the same thing in themselves when they see that joy and that freedom that we get from each other. So that's how I feel like amplified life really has the potential to expand and to build and to really shout. And it's almost like it has the ability to create a parade of freedom in other people just from that smallness that came from you. And so an amplified life is showing up as best you can so that you don't play small with yourself, and only the things that are keeping you small. And most of the time, they're really big things. They don't feel small. They feel like everything. But we also have this this like weird idea that like some part of this isn't right, and I know it, and it can be really scary to face that. And then when you do with tenderness and with courage, I mean, you overcome that, and then that's the amplification right there.
Yeah. Thank you. um, I feel like you have been embodying this really well because you and I met,
Mhm.
I think plus or minus what, like 2 years ago?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have seen you take up more space in the world in such
Mhm.
a beautiful way. So, what has been this kind of this journey or this ability for you to amplify yourself more? What's that
Mhm.
been like over the last 2 years, and maybe even longer? I only have the 2-year vision because that's how long I've known you.
Mhm.
But
Well, the first thing I need to say, number one, is like that is fucking fantastic that you see that, and that means that the work that I'm doing is representative of the change that's going on inside of me. Because when I sit with myself and do things, my business changes, the conversations I have change, the depth of it changes, and then the work, I really realize what the real work is. It really has nothing to do with styling. It really has nothing to do with speaking. It has nothing to do with performance. It's not those things. When someone comes to you asking and saying, I need help with something, that means that they're not happy with something, and we need to understand why. Why? Why are you not happy? Because we know that happiness is not based off of circumstances. And so I needed to answer that for myself. And I think, with my business especially, I kept thinking like I need to just do this, and then it'll be that thing that unlocks all of the things, and then like I will become the thing. And like and this is the thing that's so frustrating is like, part of it was like even me accepting that like I understand what is for me. Like, oh gosh, I just need to really decide how in are we going? How much time do we have?
We
Because
have all the
I
time,
know.
sister. Go
Oh my
in,
gosh.
all in.
Oh my gosh. I received this gorgeous invitation in my life to sit down at my own table and to walk the mission that I do with others in myself. Redefine the look of leadership, number one, meant that I needed to sit down, and I actually learned that not all leadership looks the same. I got to learn from being with my grandmother that sometimes leadership is like when we listen to that truth on the inside and show up for ourselves. So leadership can look like, someone having a baby. It can look like someone taking care of a grandmother. It can be a grandmother choosing to take a bath that day. She shows up that way. Leadership is not always at a corporate table. We all have a table, and understanding what that table is, it's what we are called to do, the work we are asked to show up and do. So our tables look very different. And I needed to first understand and see that my table was different, and to then not judge that table for the way that it looks, but then to just say, okay, it's different. And then when I sat down at my own table, I looked at who was sitting there, and I asked myself, there are some things that no longer deserve a seat here, at least not this prominently, like enoughness, like my value placed in my reputation, my value placed in how much money I make and how many units I've sold, and untethering myself from like that my value is placed on that. I had to sit down and ask all of these like guests and say like, do you deserve to sit here? And there were things that I just wasn't happy with anymore. And like, I understand how my clients feel when they get dressed, and I understand what happens in that dressing room. I know that because I did it myself. But, I also understand what it's like to look at yourself and not think that you're enough. And I had to really work with that so that when I look in someone's eyes and I look at them and I say, baby, you are not just enough. You are everything. That when I say it, it comes from the inside of my bones because I know it. It's not just an intellectual thing. It's not just something that I understand. It makes sense. It's something that I know to be sure. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to really ask myself, what is true for me now? Because I grew up learning certain things as true, like the more that you do, the better, and the more productive. in order for you have to chase the money. A combination of things, you have to be combative in order to be a leader. Like those things that we're taught, not necessarily all of them I believed. And I really got to ask myself, what do I believe is true? And so I think you go through this stage in business where you kind of like are tinkering and thinking, I need to try this, and then it all makes sense. I tried this and it all makes sense. And I just kept doing the work, and then I started seeing things, and I really realized what the real work was. And I realized that I really saw the true value of what it is that I do. And I really appreciated what it meant because I did it on myself, for myself first. And, some people are not asked to do that same work in their business, or like, actually, no, that's not true. I think that we all receive an invitation. We always have an invitation to sit down with ourselves. In fact, like one of the most amazing stories I heard, which brings me to my next work, which is going into Donovan Correctional Prison and exploring toxic masculinity within the prison system, is asking, hearing from this amazing man who said that one can always be a visitor of one's own heart. And that is so true. And so there were just things that like I just couldn't keep running a business based off of exhaustion. I couldn't keep saying yes to things thinking that everything was going to be the thing, and then it's going to connect me to this and this. And it's like I just was like running and chasing enoughness. So even though the words were still great, it wasn't coming from that place. It wasn't freeing. And I really needed to get down with that. And I was like, if I made the same amount of money 10 years from now, if my life looked exactly the same, would I be happy? And the answer was no. And it's like, that's not fair that my joy is rooted in conditions and circumstances. So how can we change that now? And in changing that, that's when all the other things started. It was like these miniature little wars that I was fighting in myself. And, and then on the other side of it, it was like, oh my gosh, there's like a little bit of freedom and respite, and I understand. And then you get knocked off the beam of grace and you forget, and life happens and it causes you to forget. And then it gets hard and you need to take time to get right back on and understand that when I show up for myself, this is like what happens. And so my business has really changed, and the way that I do work has really changed. And some of the things are exactly the same, but also what has changed for me is like the messaging and what I'm saying is very different, because I now fully understand what it is that people are asking to hear when they hire me. I know what truth they need to be reminded of.
Yeah.
And that's my job, is to like help in those moments of self-doubt and those other spaces where guilt and shame and all those other things that sometimes sound good and sound coachy and sound godlike and sound conscious, they also don't come sometimes from that right place. And I just want to make sure that whether that be in the dressing room or whether that be, backstage before someone's getting ready to go speak to 1,000 people, or before they make a decision on whether or not they're going to ask for a promotion, I just want to make sure that the loudest voice in all of those rooms is the one that sounds like truth, and to help quiet all the other ones so that we can figure out which one is the one that's right. And it's not the one that's right in like that kind of way, the one that's right for that person.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had to do that in order to really understand like even what people were asking me. So
Yeah. I love that visual. I've talked about it before as like I had a 9-month stretch where I went inside with like a Brillo pad and did like all the cleaning, but I love the visual of actually sitting down at a table and talking to those bits of yourself and really seeing them as like separate entities and being able to, work with them and talk to them, see what they need, and then firing them if they no longer deserve a seat at the table. And then what does it look like to hire new things to come in to
like
those places?
like a trembling but beautiful and necessary invitation to surrender, to mercy, to radical love, including making a place for the things about myself that I know will always be there. and they have a light and shadow side, and I have not fully accepted that those things will always be there. Things like having anxiety, there will always be a chair for that. So I don't want necessarily to extend a seat to you, but I know that you'll always be there. So how can I learn to be very kind and to love that radically and learn to live and dance with it and not judge it and beat it and kick it or to put it in the corner seat, but to just, you get a seat like everyone else.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to have the conversation real quick about everything you're talking about, as well as the collective piece. Because in the coaching industry and the self-help industry, it's very individualized. It's very individual therapy. I went to see Marianne Williamson speak last week, and Marianne is brilliant at bringing in the collective piece with the individual piece. And she was basically saying that higher consciousness community is what she calls it. It's very easy for us to turn away from the pains of the world as a form of enlightenment, right? As a form of
oh my gosh, this is so amazing that you're asking me this question.
Like I can't
Bring
even
it.
look at
Yes.
like I can't look at the fact that homeless people. I can't look at the fact that
oh my god
that the criminal justice system is fucked up. Like I can't even look at this stuff because I need to focus on my healing. And so
okay.
It creates a bubble where we're all like self-improving, but the collective isn't getting better.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. I am so glad you asked me this because there's a project that I'm working on that addresses this very thing. But before I can get to that, let me speak to that because you asked a very important question. A very important question.
Well, thank you.
And this is what I would invite to everyone. And this is the thing that I have to do with myself. I am not fucking perfect by any means at all. But I have been lucky enough to learn this particular thing. We have a tendency to feel like we should not feel pain. Pain is something that we should not have. We judge those feelings. And so I need to avoid it or dismiss it or push, like, oh no. And sometimes there were tremendous gifts when we do anything by avoiding it, okay, like you can call it lots of names, self-care, you can call it a lot, but only we really know. And self-care is that's also like, for a moment, and then you can learn how to actually sit with it. You have to learn how to live with pain, how to deal with those things, because life is painful. And I think we live in a culture that's like, that shouldn't be that way. It's like marriage is hard because it's hard, not because you chose the wrong person and you shouldn't do it. It's like it's hard because it's hard. Having a business is hard because it's hard. Dealing with depression is hard because it's hard. All of those things are hard because it's hard. And so while there's a duality to it, and while those things are really shitty and fucking terrible, what also, when you sit with it, what also do you learn and see? And so, I invite every person for when we sometimes feel called sometimes to do work or to explore something. And it's so quick. It's it's such a radical honesty and sitting with self to really ask, yes, but what am I avoiding? And also say, okay, what in this particular issue, let's say, for example, the invalidation and the dismissing of other people's pain in particular. Let me give, for example, often I'm asked, my experience as a Black woman, and I share it. It's like, no, that's not that. It's like, okay, what does this bring up in you? Because that's really what this is. That's what we're dealing with. This is really what you're telling me. This is a conversation about what you were trying to convince me you are not versus seeing how I feel and being with that. So it's in really asking ourselves, inviting ourselves to sit with those things that cause pain and ask, why does this cause me pain? Why do I feel this way? And then we have that answer and then say, but is that true? Like, I'm telling you, and it is only through, I'm not going to speak to other people's pain also, but I'm telling you that in sitting with my own, I have learned how to make a space for others. I have learned how to go to those places that I already and I will admit that some of this is also my own gift, that I know how, I understand and look for that specifically. But that's why I'm so lucky that I get to like do that, and it's only because I'm constantly working on it in myself. Is like to go where I'm asked to go, including those places that I don't want to, and to radically surrender to that and to accept it and say, okay. And maybe that's okay to like be afraid of that or to not want to do that. But if I don't have the willingness, I can always pray for the willingness to have the willingness to sit with it and to try. For example, when I had this idea of doing a project inside of a correctional facility, dealing with men who are convicted in a life sentence, I'm a freaking fashion stylist, okay? Explain to me how the two of those things connect. It's not clear to me. But then I went there because I was like, I need to go. I need to go. And it's like, it's amazing how my own feelings and even like just the heaviness of it could block me from even being there. Be there, be still. Even the parts that you don't like, because there's something in it for you. That's why I'm here. We have to figure out what that something is in for us. And sometimes that takes a lot of time to figure that out. But having the willingness to really sit with it, then we go into those places that we thought we dare not go. Then we sit with and try and make it, once we learn to hold space for ourselves, to explore those very hard things and the things that cause us pain, and also seeing how they can cause us joy. Because, working through those things, we learn how to better make a space for others. So, like, that really comes and boils down to each one of us and how real we are willing to get with ourselves. And if you really believe that, I am my brother and I am my sister, okay, well then I invite you just to even start with, what does your dinner table look like? Who do all of the guests that sit there, do they all think the same thing as you? And mind you, like I had a Republican National Committee call me the other day on the phone, and I got so upset and my reaction was so visceral that in that moment I forgot the dignity of that person. I didn't act. I did not live up to making a seat. And so it was like, okay, let's sit with that. I need to sit with that. Mm-hmm. And like, ruminating is like not helpful. Spinning is not helpful. Sometimes we need to step out of that and say, okay, maybe it's time to try, especially if it's scary and you don't want to. Then for sure. God, that's the worst. Yeah. When you like really don't want to, and then you're like, fuck. But part of it is like that radical acceptance and surrendering to it. This amazing woman told me, surrender is always an option. Like, oh, that's right. Every time I like, even the willfulness to keep me wanting to do certain projects or like wanting to do work with certain communities that I'm afraid of, wanting to show up and say certain things that feel very scary and honestly like bring up stuff in me. And it's completely valid that I have those feelings. But it's like, okay, but it's not about you also.
I think what you're kind of dancing around, if I may, that I'm hearing, is the word or the two words or the spectrum of words, which is fragility and resilience.
Yeah, and the duality, and I don't mean to be dancing around. I mean to be painting. Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that that's like there. I mean to be like declaring that the fragility and vulnerability. Yeah, yes.
But here's the deal, right? Like the reason why I'm finding in my life it's so easy for me to turn off what's happening with the rest of the world is a sense of fragility, of fear of the pain, of fear of being held accountable, of fear of having to look at my own work. But it's the same fear that prevents us from looking at our own shit and us taking
Exactly.
responsibility for the people in our own life. It's the same thing. So
it's the same conversation. And that's the thing that is so freaking crazy and beautiful and excruciating about it at the same time.
So if we can develop resiliency and use and connect that the resiliency in the inner work is the same resiliency in the outer work, I think that that's what's the missing piece in the self-development industry, and really then turn the power that we're cultivating in this collective into greater worldly changes.
And I tell you honestly, it amazes me how much it's like, it's not even that it's like a blanket statement because it's such a personal, private thing. But I do know this. I do know that real truth in those things like never come there. While there may be fear and even like guilt and shame that may run in it, still, it's like mostly it comes. It's real love, real truth. And like, you know, what's really funny to me is if you had told me 2 years ago that I would actually have a desire to talk about sitting with pain and exploring and challenging like God and doing all of those things, like I would have been like, oh, please. You know what I mean? I would have not scoffed at it, but I grew up in the church, you know, so I have this real kind of like about it. And what's so amazing to me is, oh man, now honestly, I know the real work is like, I swear to you, for me personally, I'm just looking for God in every conversation.
Yeah.
Whether that be in the dressing room or whether that be with myself, whether that be in the prison or wherever that is.
I want to ask you, what was that switch? Because 2 years ago you said you wouldn't have even gone here, and now this is your daily work. So what happened? What?
I went and asked for help. So here's the thing. At this time of my life, about 2 years ago, I made the decision to focus on my business and to do it full time. I did not have enough clients. I did not have a net, none of those things. But I just was like, I need to make a decision. What's it going to be? One of my fairy god big sisters, that's what I call her. She helped me make that decision. And I understood it was one that it was still fear there, but I also understood that there was like a lot of trust, a lot of guts, I can't explain it, but I just need to. And the woman who I will become, that lady will get me through it. I know you're scared right now, but even if you don't make it in that particular way, the woman I will become will be able to take care of it. And I think that was part of the fears, like, oh my God, I can't do it. You know, it was like, okay, well, let's just play with that then. So the first thing I did, in order so I wouldn't have a lot of overhead. And I like to explain every single movement, because we kind of sometimes, especially in like business spaces and in like the personal development arena, it's like we think there's like a formula for certain things, like at least I did. And I think that sometimes that can really be unhelpful. I want to explain how each thing led to each thing, so to show and illustrate for everyone that there are so many ways to have certain opportunities, and that on the outside certain things can be happening, but let me show you and what was going on in the inside, so that you know when you have those feelings and you're in that place that you're not by yourself, don't judge that. That's okay. In fact, that's right. In fact, the mess and the madness, that's part of it. So let me in that space share. So I moved in with my grandmother to help take care of her. She has dementia. And it was like I can move out of my place and remove the overhead of having to pay rent in an expensive city every month. So that way I can take a step back from doing contract work to help as a buffer in my business. So that way I'd be doing just that. Now, fueled on a cocktail of naivety, self-righteousness, and also the mercy of not knowing fully what I was getting myself into, I moved in here. And then I found myself taking care of a woman with dementia and also trying to grow a business. So then I said to my family, if you want me to do this, you know, we had to have a whole conversation about money and boundaries. And I had to, for the first time, call my family as an authority, which is very different than as as a niece or a daughter or a child. I said, no, I may be that, but in this space, I am the authority. That's new. I needed to work on getting to that point. So there were things I just said with myself, like if my life was the exact same, would I be happy? If I made the exact amount of money, if I did the exact same work, if I lived in this exact same house, if I had the exact same relationship status, if all those things, like, would I be happy? And the answer was no. It's like, get good with that. Let's get with that. Let's work on that. So like, I know that in that arena, there are not often ways that like, and part of that is privilege in itself that I can even stop and ask that fucking question. I want to own that part of it. I received that offer and I just called and said there was no money, there's no way. I called my parents and I said, listen, I need help with people pleasing. It's like I need help with, I just feel like overwhelmed. And being here with grandma, like I need support because like there's other ways in my life I just need help with. So then I sat with that and I started going to therapy. Meanwhile, I'm running my business, doing my grandma, Then my therapist is talking to me and she's like, which I've talked and share all the time about how I got into fashion styling, and the reason why is because of my own issues with my own self. I wanted my clients to feel better than how I felt as a woman in this world. I received that invitation. It was like, and at first I was like, no. But I had come up with this thing called the woman on the other side, which essentially is like my higher self. I call her Tutos. And the woman on the other side of pain, the woman who walks through things, if she was to speak to me on the other side at the beginning, what would that woman say? And that woman would say, maybe we should just go and try and just sit and see. And then I went there and I was like, oh, fuck, I got to be here. This is my place. I don't want for it to be. Then I needed to spend time doing that. And then in sitting and starting to sit with those things, and I realized like, oh my gosh, I've been all of these things that I thought were true about me, these things aren't true. And I've been running a business and living my life based off of thinking that I'm actually not smart, I'm actually not enough, I'm actually not this, I'm actually not that. And so I needed to really actually learn what was true for me. I needed to learn who God was for me. I needed to learn what the truth was for me. And everything then changes. The way that I eat changes, the way I fuck changes, the way I work changes, the way I run changes, the way I sleep changes, everything changes. The way I ask for money, the way I have conversations, all of that. So when I started doing all of that, then the conversations that I started having were so much deeper. And I learned how to hold space for my pain. And then other people started sharing theirs with me. And then I got to like see other things, and I really got to actually see, I see myself in that person. And then I really see like people who work through and tell the truth about themselves. Oh my God, that's where it is right there. Because I have been on the receiving end of the grace that is offered when we tell the truth about ourselves. I listened to women who were on the floor feeling like they were broken, and I just started listening to their stories, and I started doing those things. And I started telling the truth about myself for me to me. And then naturally, things just changed. And then I wasn't like afraid of pain like that. I could actually sit with people and they could tell me things. And I realized like, wow, I learned actually how to hold space for things, which means I don't force the silver lining. I don't project hope. I just am still with it. And I can meet people there because I've learned what was like to meet myself there. And what I needed wasn't any of people projecting other things onto me. And we are so easy to step onto other people's holy ground. It is so easy to do it because we don't even know the ways we're doing it. We don't even know like the immediate desire to be like, but you'll get through it, or to invalidate, or to all those things. We are so quick to do it. And you learning to be very still with you and to look at all of those feelings and be like, okay, which ones of these are valid? Is that really true? Why does that hurt, Sky? Sit with that baby. Go slow. Don't push. Don't push. That's not the voice. I learned, and the conversations that I had, just, oh my God, if they already were in a deep place, because look, I also am not, this is like me all the time, so it's not like, so I'm saying some of this is also, there's privilege in these pieces also. I own that part. So I've also had to deal with that. And let's talk about that. It's like, well, who am I? You know what I mean? Because other people's is worse. It's like, yeah, that is true. On the spectrum of pain, someone's will always be worse and someone's will be easier. But what is yours is yours. Take what is yours. And then we can't run away from others or deny others just because of what it brings up in us. That's not fair. Like, you learn after you see yours, and you learn to honor yours, and you find the holy in it, and you honor the ways that you showed up to get through it, and you start looking and saying, what person does that? You know, like, you kind of look through those things in retrospect with more empathy and kindness, and you take your time there. You really take your time there. You go super slow, and you evaluate each little artifact one piece at a time, and it's really fucking painful. And you learn in your way how to deal with that. You learn how to dance with it. And I tell you, like, it is, when I say brutal, which is Brene Brown's word, like, it really is that. It's like we all marvel at butterflies, but there's real pain in getting there. It's like you actually do die. And so if part of you feels like you're dying, it's like because you are. So part of that is like when other people are like, why do you feel like that? It's like, and then you judge it, and you're like, why is this so hard? It's like, it's hard because it's fucking hard, queen. It's hard. It's hard to tell the truth about yourself. It's hard to fucking sit with your pain and look at all the ways that those things that you learned when you were a baby that weren't true. And you know they're not true, but every 99% of you telling you it's true and saying it in the meanest, loudest way. But there's this little quiet voice that maybe also says, is it? Is it though? And go to those places, walk in the direction of your healing, go slow there, and be really honest with yourself. And then, like, when we do that, we understand, like, you know, the places that we get invited to go. I'm telling you, it's not the place that you ever wanted to, but it's where you need to go. And there's something in it for you. So for me, part of it was like, just figuring out and understanding, like, oh, then I understood. Part of my stress in my business was figuring out, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? So I just was like, fine. I just made this like weird declaration. I was like, tell me where to go and I'll go. That was like literally how I was so exhausted with myself. I was like, just tell me where to go and I'll go. And I said, I'll bring courage. If you promise to go with me, I'll bring courage. I cannot promise that I won't be afraid, but I'll try my best. I'll be anxious, but I'll try not to be afraid. And I'll go and I'll do it. And I know what my job is. It's to bring the truth there. And then when I started doing that, I went to these like different jobs. And then I realized, like, you know, my job was to go there and like to do my work, the real work of what it was, which was to show up and really learn even that that's enough. Oh my God. And I'm telling you, on the front end of all of this, it's like you could just roll your eyes, but I'm telling you one thing at a time. And I'm just, you know, butterflies move in the world very differently than caterpillars do. And it's really painful to become that, but it's necessary. And my God, darling, you can do it. You just got to go to the places that can remind you, and you have to lie the truth to yourself a lot of the time, and go places and to people who remind you the truth of who you are, that at your core, you are enough, and no, those things are not your fault. And you take the pieces that are for you, you leave the rest where they belong, in shit. Find your holy parts, and you keep going, and you keep running as best you can, even if it's just a fucking crawl, even if showing up just is waking up that day. You show up. You deserve it, and you can do it. I am living proof. And you're right. When you start to realize that life could almost be like this collection of overcoming and showing up, it could exhaust you. It could exhaust you. And that's why I always go back to that poem by Hafiz, which is the place where you are right now, beloved, circled on a map for you. There is no place where you have gone, where our beloved has not stepped, bowed there, knowing you were coming. Knowing you were coming. I had to really get good with that.
I love that.
So
I think my favorite thing that you said was walk in the direction of your healing. That's beautiful.
That's amazing.
Did you
I'm like feeling all the I'm like in the flow. I know that I'm in the flow and I'm yawning. Like energy is moving through me. It's good. It's so good to hear you. And I love the wisdom that you have to offer. And we want to hear more of it, which we'll take into the extended cut. So for those of you that want to listen to more of Skylar's incredible wisdom, she's like preaching it here. You are welcome to join us at beamplified.community. So it's www.beamplified.community. That'll take you into the Facebook group, and then you get to get all of our extended cut access. So Skylar, thank you so much for sharing such incredible wisdom with us. You know, we so appreciate you. And if people want to learn more about you and your work in the world, where can they go?
Well, they can find me at laredballoon.com or follow me on Instagram handle laredballoon, LeredBalloon. But I also want to say, you know, it's a special place when you're invited to just tell the truth about things. Often people will say and ask you questions saying that they want the truth, but then when you tell it, it's like, I don't know. Or like at least your truth, you know, like, so you guys really did such a beautiful job of letting me do that and share that. So thank you for making that space for me and for others to receive it.
Thank you for going there. We appreciate your authenticity and your vulnerability, and
Yes.
we want to be one of those podcasts that isn't just the cookie cutter steps. So thank you for going there with us.
I'm telling you, vulnerability is where it's at, and like I even had to explore, especially with the masculinity stuff, that like vulnerability is actually strength, not weakness. I had to really, it's like it's one thing to intellectually know it, it's another thing to let it in your bones, and then to like keep doing it.
Let's talk about this in the extended cut pod.
Yes.
Hold on to your feelings, and everybody come join us. Also, if you want to find us on the socials, the Amplify Co. is where it's at. We love Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And until next week, go be amplified.
Bye.